Good morning and welcome to Studio 5 going live, day 4 of the Studio 5 online summer exhibition. Today we're going to be looking at, well, you could either say one book treated three ways or three books treated individually. Slightly more about that later. The title of the work is Instrument. It's an artist's book, and that basically means that I've done all the printing, paper decoration, making end papers, etc., etc. The text blocks are section sewn. The paper is mould made, so I've left the decal on all the edges so it's untrimmed. And the first two books we're going to be looking at, they are rounded and backed with sewn end bands. That's a little bit of technical stuff there. Once again, if anything is of interest or you require any more information, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me via the usual channels, as they say. The first book we're looking at is a Disappearing Spine Bradell binding. Materials used are paper and leather. The printing technique that I like to use is an offset technique, and it really is great fun because though you've got a sort of a good idea of what you're going to be ending up with, you're never too sure because of the print technique itself is quite loose, to put it very, very mildly. And within that, we get a sort of an idea, if we get a close-up there, of the various different sort of ways that the print works. It is a very moving technique when you're actually working with it. And you've got to work with a degree of happiness and spontaneity sometimes. The text block is a mixture of various different print techniques, or two basically. What we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the text block, and if I just turn this around, we can see that it's got pretty plain end papers, but the text block itself is typeset printed with these quite unctuous prints, which have been abstracted from a book from about 1915, something like that. The text itself, title Instrument, is a series of dreams from the First World War. That's the 1418 war, for those of us who would like a little bit more information about that. And in particular, a pilot during that period. And it's about dreams and his relationship with his machine. For me, it's quite poignant because my grandfather was in the Royal Flying Corps, which of course is a precursor to the Royal Air Force, and he actually went through both World Wars. But there we go, a remarkable person. People did tend to be of that age. Each text block has been printed with the same imagery and the same type. However, because of the nature of the printing itself, each book is singular in that no two prints are the same, and I think that really does sort of lend itself to the creativity. Well, that's book one, and you'll notice that the outside basically has got the decoration. We're now going to go to book two in this trilogy, if you like. So I'll just pop that there for now. And now we're going to be looking at book two, and this is the same text block but treated in a different way. This perhaps looks at the more visceral, harder side of the conflict. This is a full leather binding, pieced board. We've got quite a lot of texture and things happening with it. And the size of this is 29 centimetres by 19 centimetres by 3 centimetres deep. And the other book, quite thin actually. The first one we looked at was only 1 centimetre thick, so rounding and backing was a joy with that, as it was with this. With this particular book that we're looking at, we can actually see that we've got quite a lot of sculptural detail in the actual board itself, and the thickness of this, including the sculptural details, is 3 centimetres. So again, it's a slightly different way of working. The textures have been created using the leather in a natural way. You also notice hints of yellow throughout the text block, and the bindings with these particular books has been used. The texture has been created by basically using a technique that was employed to great effect by David Sellers. Those of you who are not familiar with David Sellers' work, I suggest you do look it up. He was my mentor when I was a licentiate designer bookbinders. Now, if we remember back to the first binding, we see that the decorative papers are actually on the outside of the binding. This book differs, and this is the beauty of being able to do this sort of thing, especially with a series of books, is that the what was on the outside has now become the doubleurs on the book, second one and the first one, and we can actually see that the papers are the same, though slightly different, of course, because again, once again, it's this print technique that allows us to have this variation. And again, you can see perhaps subtle differences between the prints themselves. It really is, for me, it's a great way of working. Anyway, we'll go to the third book, which again is quite a change, shall we say. And for this particular one, I employed the same technique that I've used for a book that we've seen previously, which is Sir Patrick Spen's, in that it is a fixed backboard binding. With this particular book, what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a format that perhaps looked at wide open spaces, which a pilot enjoys. It's this open field in front. This backboard has been gessoed and sanded quite smooth, and I like the undulations that we get with the colour as the base paper begins to come through. The measurements for this are 30.5 centimetres by 26 centimetres by something like about 1.7 centimetres thick. The nice thing about this binding is that I was able to push it a little bit further to go that extra mile, as it were, in that we'll notice as we have the book on the turntable here that we have a more of a sculptural element to the book, in that the front board is actually hinged, it's articulated, so that we can see different vistas of what is happening. So this actually, we can actually physically, having a little bit of the binding itself traversing over. So again, we get hints about what's happening on the inside as well as on the outside. So again, we have this change of the book so that it becomes more than the previous examples, shall we say, and again in the 3 dimensions, and we can begin to turn this round. For me, this has been quite an enjoyable exercise, revisiting these books, which are again from my collection. It's quite interesting what one can do with a little bit of mind and a little bit of thought. Anyway, that's the trilogy, the 3 books, if you like, of Instrument. Thank you all very much indeed, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, let's follow all the guidelines as much as we can understand them. Basically, use your common sense. Stay safe. Thank you, and bye-bye.